Another episode begins, and this week we have for you, in our new retro games reviews, the amazing Go-Go BunnyGun, an incredible shoot-'em-up for the ZX Spectrum, followed by a review of the Holy Warrior, an action platformer for the Amiga computers. The new games reviews close with the amazing Bubble Bobble, Lost Cave for the Commodore 64. In our hardware review, we get a close look at the ElCheapo Flashcard for the Atari Lynx and all the conveniences it brings to play your classic Atari Lynx games. Our DOS and WinVolt bring the enhanced remake of the classic game Diggers on our screens. And in our Retrospect review, we remember Duke Nukem's origins with the amazing Duke Nukem II. In our Retro Adventures, we review the enhanced version of Geo's Quest, In Search of Queen Lorraine, and in our Retrospect, we play the classic and still interesting Neuromancer by Interplay. Finally, in our history lesson, picking up from where we left last week, we look into the swan song of industry's giant Gunpei Yokoi in collaboration with Bandai. We talk about the history of WonderSwan. So, let's begin our journey back in time once more. Let's begin this week's new retro games reviews with something unique. This is Go-Go BunnyGun by Jofis for the ZX Spectrum 48K computer, and it is a parallax scrolling colorful shoot-'em-up with no color class on site. The first thing that will grab your attention when you boot up this game is, of course, the aforementioned parallax scrolling, and no small feat to achieve on a ZX Spectrum, especially a 48K model. Scrolling is there though, and it flows smoothly without interfering or causing any trouble to the game's speed. On the contrary, it provides a more immersive experience. This is accompanied by some very nicely drawn and big-sized sprites that move effortlessly on screen, multicolor too, mind you. The game has some good and fitting sound effects, but no in-game music unfortunately, but my guess is that it would be too much or almost impossible to achieve technically, what with all the optical marvels that the game manages to pack on 48K RAM. The controls are quick and responsive, and you'll get used to them in no time. Your character can move from left to right following the screen scroll, or can reverse its facing direction and shoot backwards by keeping the fire button pressed. There are power-ups and bonus items to collect, and a great variety of enemies and hazards to face and avoid, and of course a series of boss fights to challenge your skills. You also get to choose amongst 3 different pilots to take the fight to, all with different shooting skills. The rankings are Graphics 9.4, Controls 9.3, Music and sound effects receive an 8, and the gameplay a 9.3 for a total of 9.1, and the title of the Game of the Week. A technical marvel of a game, and at the same time, a fun and varied shoot-'em-up that will top your list of shooting games in no time. Our second review is for the Holy Warrior, an action platformer by Amiga Games for Amiga computers with at least 1.5 megabytes of RAM. The game follows the adventures of a holy warrior, as he seeks 6 ancient books of power to restore peace in his kingdom of Eldoria. The game packs some very nice graphics, quite detailed and with very good animation. The feeling of the visuals is more of a comic style than a gothic, but with a darker tone. The controls of the game are good and simple, but there is a general floaty feeling to your character, and the fact that if you attack mid-air, the character freezes mid-air also and remains there until you stop pressing the fire button creates a weird feeling of control. The collision detection also is a bit flimsy. There was a time when my character was obviously hit, but remained unscathed, and other times that I obviously avoided damage but lost a heart anyway. The enemy sprites also sometimes just elevated from the bottom of the screen to the top platform with no fitting animation to justify this. These are some noticeable problems that I do hope will be fixed on a later update. The game has a moody and atmospheric music that really gives it that dark sense that fits the story. The sound effects are also of very good quality and well placed. There are also boss fights that bring a variety and further challenge to the game and are a very welcome addition. The rankings of the game are: Graphics 9.1, Controls 6.5, Music and sound effects 9, Gameplay 7.8, for a total of 8.1. This game falls into the category of flawed gems. It has all the potential to be a golden winner, it just needs a little more tinkering and improvement to get there. It's still worth a try though. Our third and final review for this week is for the incredible Bubble Bobble Lost Cave by Dave's Retroforge for Commodore 64. This game is called also the true spiritual sequel to the classic Bubble Bobble game, and for a good reason. This isn't a mere remake or retouche of the original game. Lost Cave brings a whole new 100 levels that were designed by Taito themselves and were originally meant to be released for the console versions. All brought together and carefully united, are now ready for you to enjoy for your Commodore 64. The game's graphics are updated and brought on par with the remastered version of the game. That means clearer, more beautifully colored and better animated sprites and levels. The classic music theme of the game is also present and accompanied by some arcade-quality sound effects. The gameplay has been tweaked a little bit, bringing the difficulty slightly higher but nothing to scare new players away. There are some new bonus items as well, straight from the console versions we mentioned earlier, making sure that you get a fresh take on the gameplay and thus giving you an excuse to play the game, if you needed one that is. The controls are perfect and very responsive, with a fair and carefully adjusted collision detection. There is also an amazing option to utilize 2 buttons on a joystick to bring the original arcade's feeling even closer. The graphics are awarded a 9.4, the controls a 9.3, the music and sound effects a 9.3 as well, and the gameplay a 9.4, for a total of 9.3, and for the first time in our show, the second title of the Game of the Week. An incredible, fresh, and wonderfully created version with new content of one of the most classic arcade games ever. Do not miss it! Welcome to this week's hardware review. Well, finally our Atari Lynx has arrived, and now we get the chance to test ElCheapo SD for the Atari Lynx. This is the second revision by benven.com. This is a flashcard, of course, a very stylish one. It's very simple to use and install. You have your SD memory card right here. You copy your ROM files in there and you're good to go. Now, the process is like you would insert any game. It would be like this. Now you have to be a little bit careful so as to plug it all the way in, but not too much inside. It's a bit finicky like that. Now I'm gonna use a power supply for the Atari Lynx. I do love it, but you know how it eats up all the batteries. Now let's see, because I did run into a small problem sometimes whilst using this card. And here we go. This is a modified. Let me help here. There. Maybe this will improve the... there. Much better, right? Now, you move, of course, left, right, it's page up, page down, and the directional buttons. Now, choose a game, press A, and it's as simple as that. Very simple, very fast. Very mediocre game, by the way, but that's a whole different story. Responsive, no artifacts, no nothing, as you can see. Oh god, this is a tough as nail games. Now, let's check out another one. As you can see, the operation is really, really easy. Where was that favorite game of mine? Was it this one? No, that's okay. We're here for testing purposes. As you can see, everything works fine. It's very responsive. There are no bugs, no weird artifacts on screen. I don't even know what the hell this game is. This is an IPS screen, that's why you get to see it so clearly. Now, this one, let me unplug the power supply. Like I said, I was not going to use batteries because it really chews them up. This is a very good flashcard. It's actually the best option for your Atari Lynx. It's fully compatible with both models, both Atari Lynx 1 and the second version of Atari Lynx, the more compact, although I do find that the original is a bit prettier, but maybe that's just me. You just have to be a little bit careful when you insert it. It has to make full contact with the slot in here Otherwise, it will give you an insert game message, not when booting up. If you haven't inserted it right, it will boot up perfectly, but when it tries to run the game, it will give you an insert game message. If that happens, it's because you didn't plug it in correctly. It's not the flashcard's problem. Now, the price is right for this. It works perfectly. It uses an SD card, so the sky's the limit for what you're going to include. You can include your entire collection of games in here. I have nothing but good words to say for it. I definitely recommend getting one if you don't want to push your cartridges too much and you want to run the backups. This is the best option on the market right now. So yes, it's definitely a thumbs up from us, and I'll see you next week. Welcome to this week's DOS and WinVolt, and we begin with Diggers, a fun remake by hot exotic design of the classic MS-DOS and Amiga game of 1993. This is a full remake of the classic game on every single level. The graphics have been redrawn using the pixel art option of the PC version, rather than the more closely hand-drawn style of the Amiga CD32, but they are still gorgeous and very nicely animated. The goal of the game is to pick a race of diggers and start, well, digging for gold, gems and other valuables that you get to sell to the market later in order to achieve your goal. You can buy new tools and equipment with the money gained, but be mindful that prices fluctuate all the time on the current value of each resource. The gameplay follows a style closely resembling the one from the Lemmings games, as you get to issue commands to your units that then go about following them until you give them a different one, or until it's not possible to go on further with it. The music and sound effects of the game are quite good. There are some nice themes on the menus and in between them, but in-game there is only the sound of digging and an eerie sound of the wind. The controls are a bit complicated and take some time to get used to. The gameplay does bring a bit of an update to the tried and tested Lemmings' formula, but it feels a bit slower than Lemmings themselves. As a remake though, this is a solid effort, and it is impressive that it even improves upon the original with many quality of life upgrades. The rankings are as follows: Graphics 9.2, Controls 8.2, Music and sound effects 8.4, and gameplay 8.5, for a total of 8.6. An excellent fun remake of a flawed but fun game. Our DOS Vault Retrospect today hosts a video gaming celebrity. The Duke himself has graced us with his presence, albeit in a much younger version of himself. This is the Retrospect review of Duke Nukem II by Apogee Software. Before the Duke exploded on our screens in full 3D magic, he was a platforming hero of the server days and one of the best, we dare say. The premise of the game was that an alien race named Regelatins kidnapped the Duke in order to use his brain to create the ultimate AI that will help them conquer Earth. Duke, of course, escapes, and all hell breaks loose along with him. This is a big, loud, and bombastic game just like the Duke himself. The graphics are vivid, colorful, with big sprites in both the EGA and VGA versions of the game. The game has very good animation, and there is a distinct Duke Nukem humor all around the environment. The music themes are also powerful beat melodies that intensify the action of the game. The gameplay is the classic run-and-gun fare that we used to have in all the games of this type back in the day, but the Duke's personality, along with a refined gameplay by Todd Replogle, the game's main designer, brings this one above the rest. The controls are as simple as they can be, with the directional buttons and the fire jump ones, all that is needed. The rankings are: Graphics 9.2, Controls 9.2, Music and Sound Effects 9.3, and Gameplay 9.1, for a total of 9.2. A timeless classic run-and-gun platformer that served as a prelude to the glory of Duke Nukem's legend. Give it another go. Our retro adventure review this week presents the enhanced version of Geo's Quest in Search of Queen Lorraine, a point-and-click graphics adventure game for Amiga 1200 and 600 systems by GWI. The premise of the game is the same as the original version, with Geo, a tech-savvy man, on a quest to find and save Queen Lorraine in an alternate reality. The game has been completely remade for the environment, the characters, and the user interface in its entirety. The game now utilizes the AGA and ECS chipsets to achieve a much more impressive result, giving us a game that is rehauled at such a level that it is now a whole new experience. There is also a great level of animation improvements on the character models as well as the objects, for example in even simple things like a door's animation. The rest of the gameplay remains the same. Unfortunately, this also means that some of the original version's problems, such as the pathfinding of the characters, are still present. The user interface is simple enough, but I do get the feeling that some of the actions could have been combined or replaced with simpler ones. Nonetheless, this is a review on the enhancement of the game more than the actual original game itself, and as such we must say that it really impresses. The puzzles of the game are good, even if they fall on the simple side sometimes. The music is a bit repetitive at occasion and not so impressive. The rankings of the game are: Graphics 9.5, Puzzles 7, Music and Sound Effects 7, and Controls and Gameplay 7.2, for a total of 7.7. As far as the enhancements go, this is a solid 10, but the core of the game could use a few improvements to lift it up a bit. Our Retrospect adventure review remembers one of the earlier graphic adventures for the MS-DOS, In the Face of the Neuromancer by Interplay Productions. The game was released back in 1988 for a variety of formats besides MS-DOS, including, but not limited to, Apple II, Commodore 64, and others. It is an icon-driven adventure game that utilizes both the mouse and the keyboard for controls. The story is based on William Gibson's 1984 masterpiece novel of the same name, even though it only follows the events of the book very loosely. It was originally intended as a movie tie-in, but the movie never happened. The game has a distinct cyberpunk atmosphere that precedes many games, and it even has areas that are played in pseudo 3D form, representing the cyberspace interaction. The graphics of the game for the day were very good, with big, well-animated sprite characters and wonderfully designed areas that oozed cyber atmosphere. The game has very basic music in the MS-DOS version, as it came out in the early days of PC gaming, but the other versions are certainly an improvement. The user interface, even though it looks kind of complicated, is surprisingly easy to master, and you'll handle yourselves pretty good after 10 minutes. Of course, the game's strongest area is the amazing story and the world it builds around it. The puzzles are smart, take advantage of the game's theme, and almost all of them are within the limits of logical thinking without absurd demands to solve them. The rankings of the game are: Graphics 8.5, Puzzles 9, Music and sound effects 6, Controls and gameplay 9, for a total of 8.1. One of the granddaddies of cyberpunk-themed adventure games, and a game that's definitely worth revisiting today. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that the dominance of Nintendo in the handheld market was absolute, almost throughout the market's history. But that doesn't mean that other companies did not challenge her dominance. And who better to challenge Nintendo than the man who helped make her a force to be reckoned with? This is the story of handheld gaming's fallen swan. This is the story of WonderSwan. Bandai was a company founded in 1950 by Naoharu Yamashina, a World War II veteran that created a subdivision named originally Bandai-ya, meaning eternally unchanging, with the objective of creating toys to save his wife's brother's company that was active in the textile business. The company was renamed Bandai in 1960 and achieved success for the first time when it acquired the license to produce toys for the immensely popular anime of the 60s, Astro Boy. The company continued to rise in fame and fortune by following the same method of anime licensed toys with the likes of Ultraman, Gundam, and others. By 1980, Bandai was one of Japan's most prominent toys manufacturers, and it was about time to expand into the blooming video game industry. Bandai was one of the first companies to acquire a software license for the commercial wonder that was Nintendo's Famicom, and produced quite a few successful titles for it. neither of the companies knew that fate would bring them back as opponents in the future. At the late 80s, Nintendo managed to grab, with the Game Boy, the majority of the portable consoles market right under the far superior Atari Lynx's nose. Even though the Atari Lynx was a far more advanced technologically console, with color LCD screen and a 16-bit processor, Game Boy's low power consumption, smaller size, and a vast library of games crushed Lynx. Nintendo's major opponent tried their hand to challenge Nintendo as well, with Sega bringing out the Game Gear a year later, with smaller size than the Lynx, albeit still huge compared to the Game Boy, a little but not much better energy consumption, and some famous Sega arcade titles to accompany it. Even though it fared better than Atari Lynx, it was still unable to surpass Game Boy's popularity. Bandai, in the meanwhile, was a loyal ally of Nintendo all these years, producing a series of games for the company's consoles. But by 1996, there were a series of major events in the market that put things in motion for the creation of WonderSwan. Gunpei Yokoi, the legendary inventor that gave Nintendo the edge over the competition with its many creations, most prominent amongst them, the Game Boy itself, came into a collision course with Nintendo's unique but cruel president, Hiroshi Yamauchi, over the failure of Virtual Boy, and the latter's insistence to bring it out on the market in what Gunpei considered a chopped-down form. This clash led to Yokoi's resignation from the historic company and the formation of his own Koto laboratory. In the meantime, Bandai's financial fortunes took a turn for the better, after a period of struggles and turmoil. During the early to mid-90s, Bandai tried to enter the video game market with the Bandai Pippin, a collaboration with Apple, but that ended up in catastrophe. The company then, on a second attempt to enter the market and improve its financial status, tried to merge with Sega on a humongous proposed deal that fell through at the very last moment, as Bandai's president at the time, Makoto Yamashina, could not secure the board's approval. But all that changed when Bandai struck gold in 1997 with the worldwide success of the electronic pet toy series Tamagotchi. Selling over 98 million units brought more than enough capital to the company to boost its future endeavors. This was followed by the Digimon series of electronic pets, as a more male approach that also made a huge impact, bringing with it also a successful anime hit series. Riding high on these successes, Bandai approached Gunpei Yokoi to strike a deal for creating a handheld that could finally challenge and defeat the dominant Game Boy. And who better to achieve this than Game Boy's father himself? Gunpei had already developed some ideas that would pass on to the design of the new console. Innovations such as the dual orientation controls that allow vertical mode, or as it is known today, Tate mode, the ideal way to play games like vertical scrolling shoot-'em-ups. The console also packed a 16-bit processor, far superior to the Game Boy's 8-bit processor, while still retaining power autonomy for over 30+ hours on a single AA battery. The system was also compatible in a way with Sony's Pocket Station through the Wonder Wave device. The Pocket Station was Sony's take on Dreamcast's VMU unit of a memory card. That compatibility was limited to save game data swap, but still an impressive cross-platform ability. The console also had 4 PCM channel sound chip, but weirdly enough needed an extra accessory to plug in earphones as it had no 3.5mm headphone jack. The new console was named WonderSwan, after the elegance but might of the famous bird. Unfortunately, though, fate dealt with a harsh hand. Gunpei Yokoi, the man behind WonderSwan and some of the industry's most influential creations, was killed on October 4, 1997 on an accident at the age of 57, before he could see his final creation taking form. Nonetheless, Bandai moved on with the plans, and WonderSwan was unveiled to the public in Tokyo on the 8th of October 1998. A baffling decision on the design was the excellent but black and white screen. Even though it was a screen superior of FSTN technology, color screens at the time had become increasingly cheaper to produce. Bandai, though, was adamant that black and white high-quality screen was one of the key factors that led Game Boy to its success, and in that logic, they tried to follow suit. The WonderSwan was brought officially into circulation on March 4, 1999, in 9 casing colors and 3 limited edition two-tone models. In a short period, it came with almost 30-plus game titles and a retail price of 4,800 yen, way cheaper than the competing Game Boy Color. Initial market reaction was good, with reviews praising the long playtime of the console, the small form factor, an elegant design and the clear screen. Bandai even started the proceedings to sign a deal with Mattel to bring WonderSwan to the West officially, but the deal fell through as Bandai felt in the end that the Western market was too crowded. The console's titles were good, but the lineup still lagged behind that of Game Boys. Nintendo may have lost its throne to Sony during the late 90s as far as the home console market was concerned, but in the handheld markets it was pretty much still the absolute ruler, and most software houses fell in line. This was not to say that WonderSwan did not draw third-party support. Some of the era's most prominent software houses brought to WonderSwan many of their prized franchises. Companies like Squaresoft, Namco, and Capcom supported the console with some very successful titles. But the black and white choice, though, kind of backfired sooner than later. Even Bandai finally realized that a color upgrade was essential to the console to survive, and the WonderSwan color was already on its way to be announced. Nintendo, though, beat Bandai to the finish line. On March 21, 2001, Game Boy Advance was announced, and it took the world by storm. A 32-bit handheld with a superior, albeit not backlit still, TFT screen, capable of displaying up to 511 colors on screen from a 32,768 palette, and with stereo sound and a 3.5mm headphone jack, it was leaps and bounds ahead of anything the WonderSwan could offer, save the battery life that could achieve 15 hours autonomy on 2AA batteries, but still far from WonderSwan's 30+ hours on 1AA. The Game Boy Advance retailed at 9,800, still more expensive even than the 6,800 yen that the WonderSwan Color retailed for a little later, but that did not seem enough to save the game for Bandai. Support slowly but steadily started declining, and sales dropped almost immediately after Advance's announcement. On July 2002, Bandai attempted a last hurrah, trying to stay on the market with the announcement of what is widely considered the best iteration of the WonderSwan, the Crystal version. packing an amazing TFT LCD screen, retaining all the characteristics of the original, and still at 1,000 yen cheaper than the Game Boy Advance, it seemed like a good deal. But the market had already shifted focus towards the Game Boy Advance, beginning another period of absolute dominance for Nintendo in the handheld market and sealing WonderSwan's fate. Finally, in mid-2003, Bandai threw the towel and discontinued the WonderSwan console. The console managed to sell a little over 3.5 million units, and that was way lower than the 81.51 million units of Game Boy Advance's lifetime sales. Bandai soon after this faced financial difficulties that led to a surprise merge with Namco, another one of Japan's historic companies, forming the Bandai Namco Corporation. Today, Bandai Namco is one of the world's largest companies, active in areas such as video games, theme parks, movies, and a variety of other venues. The WonderSwan was not only the first console to improve on the Game Boy's initial philosophy, it was also the last creation of the industry's possibly most important figure, and the only console to do everything right but still fail to make a dent to Nintendo's ever-mighty handheld domination. It's still fondly remembered by retro fans, and it remains to this day a sought-after console in everyone's collection.